Legacy of Phrecia is right around the corner, and if you're planning to level a Melee Marauder, you'll want to start strong. Whether you're new to Path of Exile or a seasoned veteran, these tips will help make your leveling experience as smooth as possible. So you've killed your first Hillock. Now what? Well, in this video, we're going to take a few minutes to look at some basic tips to help make your leveling experience as smooth as possible. The things that we'll cover will include just a general starting passive tree for Marauder, how to prioritize gear, and how to make the most out of the vendors in the various towns throughout the campaign. If you've never leveled a Marauder before, hopefully this passive tree example will help you get started along the way. I've laid out various levels here around what you want to do throughout the campaign, how to go about getting your various nodes, which ones to prioritize first, and hopefully this will help get you through the campaign as easily and smoothly as possible. Generally speaking, you want to prioritize things like damage and life. Those are generally speaking the most important nodes for Marauder, but there are a few things that you'll also want to focus on, such as nodes that give you dexterity and intelligence to help power things like Frost Blink as an intelligence required piece of gear or gem. Intelligence and dexterity might be hard to come by on a Marauder leveling if you don't prioritize points like this. Additionally, keystones to think about would be Resolute Technique. This helps solve any accuracy issues that you might have. And there are other various notables or masteries that you would want to consider, such as this Axe Mastery to help just give you additional damage while in Blood Stance. Blood Stance, if you're unfamiliar, comes from a couple of different gems, Flesh and Stone and Blood and Sand, and you can have a different stance and it'll give you different statistics based on which stance you are in. As you go further through the campaign, you will want to consider where your ultimate endgame build is going to be and require you to be on the passive tree. So you may want to consider a pathing that will make that transition as smooth as possible. So for example, you may want to consider going around to Constitution here and then back around this way, as it will help set you up for a smoother respec later on when you get through the campaign. Finishing up the campaign in Act 9 and Act 10, you'll want to prioritize coming down to the Duelist starting area, as there are some pretty high value nodes down here. And in my example, my endgame tree will end up being down here a bit, and so it just makes sense to come down here during the campaign. In this POB, I'm also including a set of skills that to help guide you along the way, so you can switch between the various levels of your character and see what you would want to play during that section of the campaign. Spoiler alert, Sunder is going to be your friend for most of the campaign, and I would recommend sticking with that. It is a very strong skill, definitely all the way through yellow maps, and so this would definitely be a good one to go through the campaign if you've never played Path of Exile 1 before. In the notes section, I'm also including some notes here about other tips. So we're going to look at what a good regex option would be for vendors, and I'm going to show you what that means in the game here in just a few minutes. There's also some vendor recipes that I would recommend familiarizing yourself with. If you've only ever played Path of Exile 2, in Path of Exile 1, you can sell to the vendor a specific recipe and it will give you a deterministic outcome every single time. There are a few of these that are extremely helpful for a melee start, that if you're just not finding loot on the ground, you may want to rely on these to help get you through the campaign. Additionally, I have a filter blade filter that I will link here in the POB notes section to give you guys a head start and just help you get through that early campaign experience. When you're first starting out as Marauder, what gear should you really prioritize? Well, to start with, you'll want a good loot filter to help highlight the gear on the ground that makes the most sense for your character. So please do install one of those. You can use the one that I've linked in the POB, or you can make your own using Filter Blade, but that is definitely something that I would recommend. Now, once you're in the game, the main things that you want to look for very early on starting out are any 3 links that include 3 reds or 2 reds and a green. You'll want to keep these top of mind whenever you're leveling the campaign. Ideally, you will want these that are not on your weapon, because you will be swapping out weapons throughout the campaign experience. And so if you can put these links on something that's not your weapon, that will be ideal. Additionally, you'll want to prioritize things like iron rings and rustic sashes for increased physical damage. That's just going to be very high value early on. Amulets are also a really good source of attributes early on, specifically amulets that give you either dexterity or intelligence or both. So you'll definitely want to consider these 3 jewelry options as you go through the campaign experience. Now, one of the helpful things to help you buy this gear in town efficiently is to use a regex string. So you'll see here I just pasted in a piece of text, and this is going to be linked in the POB. But the idea here is that you can use regular expressions in the search box of any vendor to help highlight specific item types that you want. So things like good weapons or specific link colorings, 3 links like this. It'll also highlight things like move speed boots, which I don't have any examples of here in this particular shop. But the idea is that you can copy paste a regex filter like this and just keep using this over and over throughout the campaign so that it helps you focus on what items you should really consider purchasing in the shop. Now, just because it highlights an item in the shop doesn't necessarily mean that you should always buy this item. So for example, if you're going 2-handed weapons, then you probably wouldn't want 1-handed weapons from the shop, but the idea is the same. Now, the last thing I want to show you here is a trick in Path of Exile 1 called vendor recipes. So in Path of Exile 2, you don't have this, but in Path of Exile 1, you can sell specific items to a vendor and have a deterministic outcome every single time. So as a melee build, one of the most helpful recipes to know is the increased physical damage recipe. If you sell a white item with a rustic sash, it has to be magic, rare, or unique, plus a blacksmith whetstone, then you will always get that same item with the increased physical damage mod as an output. There's a couple others here that make sense. You can do a resistance ring, which is just simply an iron ring with a gem. It'll give you a ruby ring. If you do a green gem, it'll give you a topaz ring, and then a blue gem would give you a sapphire ring. The other one that is super helpful to know is move speed boots. If you take a white pair of boots plus a quicksilver flask and then 1 orb of augmentation, it will give you 10% move speed boots. And so if you're having trouble finding move speed boots, but you have a surplus of quicksilver flasks that have dropped for you, then you can use that vendor recipe to get move speed boots. So take advantage of these. I'll link the wiki page in the video description for all of the vendor recipes, but these are the 3 that I think are most important for a melee leveling experience. And so take a look at these. Don't forget about them in the campaign. They can definitely help you if you are just not finding the loot on the ground that you need. So with that, I hope these tips have been helpful for you. I really do think that this is going to be a super fun league. Legacy of Phrecia is a huge meta mix-up and shake-up, and it's definitely something that this game is needing, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun playing it. I myself am going to be playing a Marauder, going to be playing the Ancestral Commander because it looks really ridiculously overpowered, and I think it's just going to be super fun to play. So I hope you guys are excited about this, and my name is Civic Dude if I haven't mentioned it, and I really hope that you got something out of this video. If you did, like, maybe comment, let me know. If you really appreciate this kind of content, consider subscribing, and I hope to see you guys in Path of Exile.